another episode of the Heroic Nation podcast. This is legitimately one of my better episodes, maybe the best. I know I say that all the time, but this is a good one. This is a good one. So pay attention to this. Kevin Donaldson. Kevin Donaldson has got a really great story. He is a retired police officer from the New Jersey area. He is the host of the Suffering podcast and has a very powerful voice in the world of trauma and recovery and mental health advocacy for first responders. Kevin is, like I said, is a former cop. He was involved in a critical incident that about got him killed. And, what happened on the back end of that is a very similar story to many of us that have been through that type of thing, So, he took that suffering and that experience and then grew from that. And that is like a big factor that we talked about was post-traumatic growth, right? Post-traumatic growth, and then community saving lives. And then we also talked about how he got hooked up with Seminar Stack and Eric and Kate, who I talked to last week or 2 weeks ago, and their event that is occurring on August 2nd. And I really want to promote that and push that some more because that's coming up. So if you can get to that is an all-day training event, specifically if you are into jiu-jitsu, but also if you're into health, fitness, training, mental health, any of those things, all of those things. August 2nd it's outside of Hershey, PA. But if you need more information, please feel free to contact me, reach out, or you can find them at Seminar Stack on Instagram and just reach out to them via Instagram, and that would be perfect. Okay. So with that said, it's a pretty long episode and we go into a lot of good detail on some really great topics. So please pay attention to it. And so I really wanted to kind of dig into like your bio, what your police career was like, being on the East Coast. I always find, like I was talking to you about, like East Coast cops, like I got a real appreciation for you guys because of my family's history and stuff like that. So, and then, how you got into your podcast and then how you got connected with Seminar Stack, ultimately.
Yeah. It's there's a whole strange story behind that. I think Kate saw me on One Cop vs. 20 Criminals for Jubilee.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's how she reached out to me. I'm pretty sure that's how she reached out to me.
All right. Well, let's start back at the beginning. Let's just go with your bio and kind of like where you're from and, start from there.
Sure. I grew up in Atlantic City, New Jersey, right outside of Atlantic City, New Jersey for a better portion of my life. We're a blue collar town, but I grew up in that area in the 70s, late 70s, early 80s. So Atlantic City was ruled by the mafia. They were all over the place. You had Nicky Scarfo, you had Phil Leonetti, you had Phil Testa. They were all Philly mob transplants, right? So, I grew up in a house that wasn't very supportive, wasn't very. It was toxic. Let's put it that way. And when you grow up in a household like that, you sort of gravitate and you try to find your way in this world. You always try to find your place, your identity. Because you feel like you never really fit in. When you're not getting that support at home, you're running from place to place trying to find out who you are. So, when I was a kid, I was labeled a very, very bad kid. Because my thinking was, if I'm going to get in trouble, well, I'm going to do something to deserve it. If I'm going to get hit, I'm going to do something to deserve it. So I was a big thief. I was a bully. You name about every bad behavior known to man, and that was me. As I matriculated, I did a lot of drugs, a lot of drinking, a lot of underage bad stuff, but pretty much anything that wasn't nailed down, I stole. But it gave me some insight into the other way of life. I started seeing some of my friends get in trouble. And as I got older, towards the end of high school, I started seeing some of my friends get arrested and get into some real trouble. So, all I was looking to do was try to get out of that place. Thankfully, my one saving grace is I was pretty bright. I was somewhat athletic, so I was able to go a couple hours away to college in New Jersey to play college football. And, I just got this opportunity to start my life over. So I was going to a place where nobody knew me, nobody knew my name, nobody knew my backstory, because I was the kid that the parents really didn't want their kids hanging around because they knew shit was going to come their way. And, I discovered this new life in college. I dove into academics. I dove into athletics, and I figured that was my path. That was my way. Until my senior year in football, I was plagued by injuries. My last year I played football. The last 2 years I was blowing my knees out. I was spraining my ankles. I blew my shoulder out. But the problem is when I went into college for football, I was just focused. I was laser focused. You couldn't get me off of it. And by the time I was done, it became a job. I didn't want to do it no more. I was tired of it. I was just done. So what I ended up doing is ripping my groin muscle so bad that it needed surgery. And and it hurt so bad. And I had a bunch of Jamaican nurses working on my groin. That was pleasurable. And I was done. I was done. And I gave it up right there. But see, here's the problem. I put all my effort into playing football and academics and all that stuff. And when that ended, that identity that I thought I found, it was just gone, and I was sort of left wayward again. So that's pretty much how I grew up. Not much, there's not much to it. If it was there for me to steal, I would have stole it. If it was, if I felt that you were less than me, I would bully you, which I regretted a lot later in my life, which is something I'm not very proud of. It doesn't make me look like a really good person.
So questions for you. So, I mean, you said you were kind of an unfocused trouble kid. Like how old were you when you started like stealing things and like actively being like delinquent,
I'm going to say probably around 9 or 10. I started breaking into cars. I had a collection of condoms at 10 years old that you wouldn't believe, because back then, you got to remember the convenience stores kept the condoms outside, and we thought they were cool. I wasn't using condoms. I don't know what the hell I needed them for. I just wanted to steal them. I stole, of course, I stole candy and stuff like this. I used to go in there with deep pockets and walk out looking like the Michelin Man. But it gave me some sort of rush. I was very good at it. And I guess the kids I was hanging around at the time saw it as something cool, so I gravitated towards it. Hey, you always want to be the best at something, and they accepted me because of that. They accepted me because I was a good thief. I think the last thing I actually stole was actually an amazing feat. I was 17, and there was a pre-construction house. We went into the house. Obviously, there's no doors on the house, but they had a hot tub in there. We stole a full-size hot tub, me and my friends, out of a house, cut the pipes, put it in the back of my truck. We're driving down the road, and we put it – I lived in a Bay community, and we put it off into the reeds. We were going to go get it. I don't know what we were going to do with it. Honestly, what are we doing with a hot tub? We're just going to put it in the woods and fill it with water? But that was what we did. I put it in a Bay area, and we went back the next morning, and someone stole it from us. I was so mad. Someone stole my thing that I stole.
Yeah. So how did you get good? How did you get good at football with all this kind of like delinquent based activity you're doing? Typically, like we see that the other way. It's like you kind of go one or the other. And if you're out running the streets and doing all that shit, then you're probably not going to be very good at sports, is typically what we see. So how did you kind of do both?
Some of it was out of fear. I was that kid that if I struck out in baseball, I would get yelled at. I would get screamed at. If I had a bad football game, I would get yelled at and screamed at. So a lot of it was out of fear. But, I was a decent sized kid. Okay. And I could hit, and I had no fear when it came to that stuff. It just came when I was a kid, it came easy to me. There was really no work at it. And when you don't work at something, you do not appreciate it at all. If I put in a little bit of work, I think I could have gone further. I think I could have done a hell of a lot more, but I just sort of did it to try to stay out of trouble pretty much. But I, like I said, I had the size. They look at a guy like me and they're like, yeah, you're on the line. And that's where I sat, and that's where I played my entire football career. It wasn't until college that I really got into to the mindset of it, because I was free from distractions from home. I just did it to probably appease my father. But when I went to college and I wasn't under that thumb anymore, and I was pretty much becoming my own man, I actually developed a love for it. And if I would have done that sooner, who knows? That's the regret that I live with. I could have done more, and I did leave it out on the field. But what it did later in my life is, because of the way I left football, I always felt that I could play, right? So what that did was it kept me from watching football for probably 20 years. I didn't watch one entire football game for 20 years because I had that regret in me. I could watch baseball. I could watch basketball. That was not a problem. Football, I couldn't watch. I just couldn't stand it.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. I played college football too, and it ended with a lot of injuries. I didn't have the career I wanted to, and on the back end of that, I went probably I don't know, 10 years without watching an NFL game, and I only recently got back into watching the NFL because my kids started watching it. So, but with college, I'm curious, like, so once you went to college, did you have a clean break with like criminal behavior, or did you continue kind of like doing shit at college too, or not?
For a short time. For a short time, I was on the straight and narrow. I figured this is my chance to change my life around. But old habits die hard. When I stopped playing football, when I stopped being consumed by football, I would do mischievous things. Not so much stealing for the sake of stealing. It was more I'd break into somebody's dorm room and clean out their room. But I wouldn't use it for nothing. I wouldn't sell it for nothing. I wasn't looking to make money. It was more because I was an asshole. I'm going to be quite honest with you. That's why I did it, because I was an asshole. I was kicked my junior year. I was kicked off campus because they just had enough of me. And what I actually did was, you ever see the big wooden spools of cable on the side of the road when they're running lines or something between the telephone poles?
Yeah.
Well, my college was in Florham Park, New Jersey, and it was on top of a mountain. Well, they were running new cables throughout there, so me and a couple friends, we're walking around campus. It's dark out. I lift one of those things up, and I think, hey, let me see what happens if I roll this down the hill. It's kind of like when you're driving down the road and that little thing comes in the back of your head saying, what happens if I'm going 70 miles an hour and I just slam it in reverse? You don't do it because, well, I didn't have that. I didn't have that brake. So I picked the thing up, I rolled it down the hill, and it, slowly, then it starts picking up speed. And there was a road down below. And this is late at night. This is like 10 o'clock at night. And there's trees everywhere. Never hit a tree. I couldn't do that again if I tried. Well, down the road comes a security Jeep. And I'm seeing it, and this thing's picking up speed, and it's coming down. And I'm like, I already know how it's going to end. I don't even need to watch. And sure enough, boom, hits the security Jeep. And I probably scared the shit out of that security officer. I ran. My friends ran. I don't know how they got caught, but they got caught. And by default, I got caught. I had to go through hearings and stuff. And that was a fun conversation, but I had no other option, right? So I wasn't going to go back live at home. So what I ended up doing, and it was those little mistakes, those little screw-ups, the consequences that I paid for them actually work out well, because in order for me to stay in college, I was very committed to staying in college. I had to move to the area that I live in now. So I've been living here since I was 20 years old, and it's become my home. So you're going to see this common theme. Everything I get nudged in the direction that I'm supposed to go. And oftentimes that nudge comes in the form of really, really rotten consequences out of usually something stupid or haphazard that I do.
Yeah, self-inflicted. So I was thinking about that too. For me, it's not a nudge. It's usually like a 2x4, like something really bad happens. It's like, hey, nudge, not paying attention, nudge, still doing what I want to do. And all of a sudden, bam, like major injury, major consequence, something like that. So yeah, I can relate a lot to what you're saying, but my background was a little bit like the opposite, but really kind of had the same final result with college. It was like, I grew up in a really restrictive household. Both my parents were involved, didn't get in any trouble. And then when I got to college, all of a sudden the restrictors were off and I could do whatever I wanted. and I did a lot of whatever I wanted, and it did not work out well. So yeah, I didn't have the career I wanted, and then on the back end of that, I can see now I've done a whole lot of like overcompensation to try to prove to myself that like I could play, I could have played. Now I can do all this other stuff too. But yeah, anyway, so moving forward after college, like how did you get into police work?
So I went to college, and I said, oh, I really loved English. I really loved reading. As crazy as it sounds, I'm my interests they're varied. I could have I could have continued down that route and been a real true blue criminal. But I also have the capacity to go the other route. So I finished college. I get my postgraduate degrees. I got two of them, and I really want to be a school teacher. Well, I taught high school English for 1 year, and I realized something. I really dislike teachers. I really, really dislike teachers a lot.
Did we
And
didn't have this conversation, did we? About
no,
teachers?
we
All
did
right, so
not.
just to kind of slide in here for just 2 seconds, my first major was secondary ed. My dad's a teacher, whole family of teachers. I got into a practicum right away and was like, I love teaching, I love coaching, I love doing, but I hated other teachers, and I was like, I
Yeah.
pulled the plug immediately. So
You
anyway,
know,
sorry.
I think it comes from I didn't like how they spoke to the kids, because I was
Yes.
spoke about the kids, especially in the they always tell you when you're going through your degrees and your certifications for teaching, stay out of the teachers lounge. Well, I didn't heed that warning. And I was in there and I'm listening to them. I'm like, God, you guys are awful. See, again, it goes back to the way I grew up. I'm a child of sexual assault, so I had that going on in the past. So when I went away to college and was able to turn my life around, I went from chaos to the ability to create my own order and really take more control over my life. But the problem is, the downside of that is I became incredibly OCD. Everything was folded neat in my closet, and I really, it didn't bode well to have a college roommate, because most people when they go away to college aren't the cleanest people in the world. I had my towels folded, my underwear was folded, everything was perfect, and if it wasn't perfect, it used to really bother me, and I would have to make it perfect. My schedule was right on, because that's how things go. Believe it or not, with police, it both more police are they come from a very disturbing childhood. They're born in chaos, live in chaos, create chaos, can't live without chaos, because that's what makes them feel normal. That's what your nervous system feels. So anytime I felt that everything was peaceful, I just created something in order to try to control it, but didn't work out. So I left. I loved the kids. I really did. I loved working with the kids. They were just fun to work with. I learned some of the greatest lessons when I did teach. Like I was teaching The Marriage of Heaven and Hell by William Blake, which is 400 years old, and in there's something called the Proverbs of Hell. Little pieces of advice that were true 400 years ago and they're true now. I thought, I'm a very idealistic teacher, and I think I'm going to give them this assignment. I'm going to say, okay, well, if you were to speak to somebody 400 years in the future and you think you're going to give them a piece of advice that is relevant to them today, as the same relevance that it has today to them 400 years in the future, what would it be? And I didn't realize how daunting of a task that is. Now, you got to remember, I'm 22 years old. These kids, I'm teaching seniors, they're 17, 18 years old. The age difference isn't that much. So most people did good, they did their best. But I had two kids. One kid came up and he handed the paper in, and it said, if you play with it, you're going to go blind. Okay, that's actually solid advice. The other one said, if you shake more than twice, you're playing with yourself. So I'm looking at this now, my 22-year-old mind, I'm still a kid at heart, and I think it's very funny, but I can't laugh because I'm in a position of authority. I actually had to have them redo it. But what it taught me is, when you give instruction, especially to young adults or children or something, you have to be ultra specific, because if they can find a hole in it, they're going to exploit it. And that's exactly what happened there. But so when I left teaching, I shifted around. I sold cars. I worked for a startup internet company where I was traveling coast to coast. And, I just I became shiftless again, and the one constant that I always did was I always was into the gym. I was always into physical fitness. I was, that's the one thing that kept me sane. Until one day I'm in the gym and I used to work out with this guy and I had no idea what he did. He just worked out hard and I enjoyed it. He introduced me to this guy and the guy says, well, why don't you take the police test? Now, one of the things you got to realize in New Jersey, police work is incredibly competitive because the salaries are so high. It's not as competitive now because of the climate, but it was ultra competitive back there. You would have a test.
What year was that? Like when you started trying out for?
I only took one test, and that was 2001.
Okay.
And you would have one open spot, you'd have 1,000 people, 1,000 applicants for it. That's how bad it was. So this guy asked me to come take the test, and it was a basic IQ test. It was nothing crazy, and I did very well on it, and I ended up getting hired. I entered in, and the way he sold it, I never wanted to become a cop. I never thought of becoming a cop. My brother took test after test after test, and he was never able to get on. I take one test, and I was very fortunate, and I didn't realize how fortunate I was until after I got hired. So I enter in the police academy, not really knowing what the job is. Like I remember asking a lieutenant saying, "Hey, when somebody hands you a union courtesy card, like how do you do that with a ticket?" I had no background in police work. I had a great grandfather that was a Philadelphia police lieutenant. That's the only tie I have to law enforcement. Somebody who I never met. I saw one picture of him. So I was so green when I went in there. I remember showing up first day to the academy, and the drill instructor looks at this list and asks my name, and he says, "Donaldson, you don't belong here." I turned my car around because I'm like, oh, I guess they made a mistake. I'm not supposed to be here. That's how stupid I was. But when I got in the police academy, I fit the discipline, the structure. It was something I was missing. And it was like I was home. And I just fit in. They made me squad leader. They put me in charge of all these guys. And it was something that I never expected. And it sort of hit me out of left field, And it was one of those incidences where I was just nudged in a direction I was supposed to be. I was always in the gym. Everybody knew me in the gym, and I didn't even know the guy I was talking to was a cop. And he introduced me to the guy he introduced me to was the police chief. I didn't know who he was. He was just a guy to me. And I just sort of got nudged in that direction. And, that identity that I was looking for as a youth, when I got to the police academy in August, I found it. I found it, and I found it even more one Tuesday morning, sitting in the police academy, North Jersey, in Cedar Grove, New Jersey. And the captain comes in and says, "Hey, a plane just hit the World Trade Center." Now, mind you, we're sitting in class. It was right after PT, and we're just sort of getting ready for instruction. Now, I remember looking over to the girl to the right to me. She was a transit cop, and there was a look of concern on her face. Not overly concerned, because you got to remember, planes hit the World Trade Centers, hit those buildings in New York all the time. Corey Lydell from the Yankees flew a Cessna right into one of them. But her father worked in the World Trade Center, so that was the look of concern. But again, nobody really did anything. There was no size. There was no nothing. It was just, hey, horrible accident. 20 minutes later, captain comes in again. Another plane just hit the World Trade Center. Now everybody was like, oh, shit, and I saw the look of concern on her face get worse. We get recalled to our department, and as I'm going back to my department, I see the towers burning because I drive right past an area that looks at the New York skyline. So I'm seeing the smoke come up, and there's before the towers fell. And we had no idea around here being, having a front row seat to this tragedy. We had no idea what was going on. We thought we were being invaded and attacked. So much so that a month into the police academy, I go to my police department. The lieutenant takes me up to the armory, hands me my gun and hands me my rounds, hands me my magazines and says, "Just don't shoot anybody." And then I go stand post. But that was the day I found out what police work was. Police work is being the source of comfort when somebody doesn't know where else to go. No, they have nowhere else to turn. And that taught me a lot that day.
Yeah. So that, I don't remember if I told you this or not, but my uncle, my mom's all from out east. So my uncle worked for the Port Authority. He was an engineer, and he died in the towers in the South Tower.
Oof.
So that day it was, again, kind of the same, but not really. Like kid from, the Midwest watching it burn in Indiana, wondering like, does my uncle still work there? Because we weren't super close, but
Right.
see him a couple times a year maybe. But yeah, and I'll never forget the same thing, man. I'll never forget going out in October of '01 for the funeral and seeing the ladder company right off the when we got off the ferry and seeing like they're all dead. And
Yeah.
and then just the skeleton of the trade center. I just never forget that. I was watching a documentary on it not too long ago, and I was telling my daughter, I was like, "You look at that. That is what I saw. It's indescribable to explain to people that didn't see Ground Zero, and it's mind blowing to me today."
So I was there a few days after the towers fell, and New York City is incredibly loud, very busy, especially around there. There's all sorts of different people. When I was down there, it was quiet, it was dusty, it was murky. Um, it was a different city, and it really crippled the city. I had, one of the guys I played college football with worked for Cantor Fitzgerald. The girl in the academy, her father worked for Cantor Fitzgerald, and Cantor Fitzgerald got wiped out. My buddy, I find out later that he was able to make one phone call after the plane hit to his wife and said, "Hey, a plane just hit the building," and then the phone cut off, and that was it. They've never recovered his body. He was incinerated, and he was a big dude. He was like, Don Adams is his name. He Don was the life of the party. He was just a big, lovable guy. He's about 6'6", 350 pounds, just a great, great human being. And, I have a lot of fond memories with him every year. So when I was down there, it took me, so we're 24 years removed from it. It took me 23 years to go back down to Ground Zero. I couldn't do it. I still can't watch any documentaries about it. I get that pit in my stomach. I try to relay that to my kids, what that was like, but I can't accurately describe it. There was just a feeling of hopelessness. It was a feeling of terror. You didn't know what was going on. We heard them scrambling the jets. Now, you could hear fighter jets going over where we were. That's how close we were. And when I went down to Ground Zero, and there's a room with all the victims, and Don's picture is in the front because his last name starts with an A, and I'm looking at him. 23 years later, I cried like a little baby. You're going throughout the museum, and you see the reflecting pools, and I find his name, and I say a little prayer by his name, and all those people went to work one day. They left their house, kissed their wife goodbye, kissed their children goodbye, kissed their husband goodbye, and they went in there to try to provide. And their circle of people, their lives changed forever. And the only thing I can equate it to is Pearl Harbor, right? So at the time, my uncle, who was a World War II vet, I kind of leaned on him. Like, I didn't know where to go. They still lived in South Jersey. He was prisoner of war in World War II. And I went down and I saw him. His name was Duke. His name was George, but everybody called him Duke. I said, Duke, Uncle Duke, I don't know where to go from here. He gave me a piece of advice that I hold dear to my heart, and I'll never forget. He looks at me and he says, "You can't be afraid, because if you're afraid, they win." And he's 100% correct. So he remembers very clearly when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor and our entrance into World War II. Oddly enough, there was a lot of brothers, and they all got drunk, and they all went and enlisted. One of them led the charge, my Uncle Bill. And all of them got taken except my Uncle Bill. So they all went to war. But those words, they hit me very, very hard. And then I chose, okay, so what do? I get back to work. Because at this point, I've left my youth behind me. And I'm starting to see a different future. I'm starting to see a different Kevin, something I needed, something I could become. And that's what police work did. So when I was standing out on post that day, people don't realize we didn't have any information. We didn't know what the hell was going on. Neither did they, but they didn't realize we didn't have any more information. And they actually probably had more information because they're watching the TV constantly. And they're coming up, hey, have you heard anything? Have you seen this? But, my brother works there, my cousin works there, my sister works there. And it was a scary time. I didn't really know what to tell them. But that's the first day I really found out what true police work is.
Yeah. So watching that, the effect that it had on me was very similar. That pit, that feeling of emptiness, hopelessness. But I had a helplessness because I was so far away too. And it was like, well, what can I do to, you talk about like reclaiming control. I was like, I don't ever want to feel this way again. So I'm either going to join the military or, get into first response, something. That was where I shifted big time with it. But yeah, I completely understand what you're talking about with that.
I dove head deep into police work. And, I saw things I really enjoyed and I saw things I didn't like. Post 9/11, so there's a big Indian community up here, and Indians sort of got grouped in with the terrorist group.
Right.
So these poor Indian people who are our friends had to post signs up on their businesses saying Indian owned, like, yeah, we're your friends. And I always felt bad for them. I always felt bad for them because they didn't want this. They didn't ask for this. And even Muslims in this country who are peaceful Muslims, they had to deal with the outcry of that. Because you got to remember, we're all judged by our lowest common denominator. If one person has a bad interaction with cops, by default, all cops are bad. And it goes that way with the Islamic world, with the Indian world, whatever race of people that you deal with, whatever group of people that you deal with, that seems to be the truth. And I love that job. I fit. I finally found I got on when I was 26. I finally found somewhere in this world that I belong, because that's all I ever wanted to do. And it took me a long time to figure that out, that as a kid, I just wanted to belong. I just wanted to be accepted. I wanted to be loved. Police work gave me all that stuff, that sense of fulfillment. And I went home with a whole heart every single day.
So how did your career kind of develop? Like what did you do once you got into it?
So I'm a bit of a nerd. So I really loved, it's going to sound crazy, I really loved investigating accidents, because a chaotic mind is always trying to put puzzles together, is always trying to make order out of chaos. And if you take a jigsaw puzzle and you dump it on the table, it looks like a mess. But as you start putting it together, it all starts to make sense. And there's a sense of satisfaction with that. So I was just a patrolman. I didn't, there was some crazy stuff that I saw, a lot of suicides, a lot of car thefts. We were real close to Newark, and there's a lot of car thieves came out of Newark. So we're getting tons of cars stealing, a lot of car chases. And July 16th, 2004, was the first time I saw somebody murdered. There was a murder at one of our convenience stores. They broke in, stole some money, shot the guy in the back, and the guy was alive when we got there. And there's the what I was talking about before, when people are lost and they don't know what to do, they're going to look to you for support. You don't have all the answers, but you got to pretend that you do in order to give them a little bit of comfort. So when they broke into this convenience store, and it was a place we always went to go get coffee. The guy's name was Eduardo. We gave him the cash, and like the cowards that they were, as soon as he turned around, they raised their gun, they shot him square in the back. When we got there, I was the second officer on scene. He's still alive, white as a ghost, big pupils. He's in shock. And he looks up at me and he says, don't let me die. That's all he says. Don't let me die. It's the only words he spoke. And I said, listen, we're going to do everything we can for you. We hook him up he was behind the counter too, so we had to lift him up, get him out. We get him in the ambulance, and we find out that he passes in the ambulance. So that was both a good time and a bad time in my police career. I always read policy. I was very well versed in case law, so I knew that stuff at the top of my head, but I had a low propensity for bullshit. My department, the administration, they made us always wear our hats when we got out of the car. Whenever we were in public, we always had to wear our hats, which I get it. It's a good look. I was a uniform guy. My uniform was always squared away. My shoes were always shined, because I believe that command presence does something in police work. It lowers the threat level without doing anything, without saying anything, without putting hands on anybody. If you look squared away versus somebody who's overweight, out of shape, white powdered donut mess all over their uniform, your respect level goes down. So we're out there, and you got to remember, I worked in a small suburban town. We didn't have a whole lot of murders. As a matter of fact, the prior murder in town was a mob hit in 1971, right?
Mhm.
So, you're 33 years from the last murder. Nobody knows how to work murders. So we do the best we can. We cordon it off. We put whoever enters the scene. We do everything that we're trained to do. So one of the sergeants comes up to me and says, Kev, I need you to put your hat on, or chief wants you to put your hat on. I said, my exact terminology out of my mouth, and this is what sealed my fate, was I said, you got to be fucking kidding me. All right. And I went and put my hat on. Well, that sort of got me on the B team. Let's put it that way. And also I was involved in a union. That didn't help at all. I was very, I really wanted to help do better for the guys. So I always had that helping heart when it came to that. I always looked out for the people next to me. They came before me every single time. And this was no different. But I was able, throughout my career, I was able to do a lot of good things. And it's not the car chases that I remember. It's not the arrest. It's not the big arrests that you make that make the news. There was one call in particular that I remember to this day, and this will tell you what police work is. So we go to a call of a woman who is suicidal. We go up there, we're called by her mother. She's up in her room and she has a steak knife. Now, back then it was the 25-foot rule, right? You're not supposed to go within 25 foot of somebody with a knife. They can get you before you draw. But in the bedroom was her 4-year-old son, Mason. And I just sat on the bed with her and I just talked to her. Now, Mason, this 4-year-old kid, he sees somebody with, I had my collar brass all shine, my radio. You look like Batman went to a 4-year-old. And he's just sort of sidled up next to his mom. And he doesn't want to get away from his mom. You could tell he's a little scared, he's a little worried. But I'm just talking to her. I'm just like, hey, whatever this is, we can get through this. And I'm just trying to talk her down. Everybody else is sort of standing in the doorway of the room. Well, over the period of, say, 20 minutes, Mason just starts pointing to stuff on my belt, and I'm sort of engaging with him. I'm like, no, they're handcuffs. I take out my handcuffs. I show them to him. I take out a magazine, show it to him. My badge, I let him touch the badge, and you see Mason start getting closer and closer and closer. But it triggered something in the mother, that this beautiful, curious little boy was worth living for. So bottom line is, we get her out of there, we get her help, and that's it. You rarely interact with anybody twice, especially when something goes like that, unless they're a frequent flyer. So fast forward 10 years, I'm in the grocery store, I'm in civilian clothes, and I behind me I hear Officer Kevin. And then when you get your name called off duty, that's never a good sign, right? You never want to have somebody call your name off duty. So I turn around and it's a 14, 15-year-old old young man. And I look at him and he goes, "Are you Officer Kevin?" I said, "Yeah, I'm Kevin. How can I help you?" And he goes, "I know you don't remember me, but my name's Mason. You helped my mom out 10 years ago, and she's better now, and she's good now, and I just want to thank you." And he gave me a hug, and that's police work. Okay. That's police work 100%. You affect one person's life. You're not looking to make the grandiose, impact on the world. You just one person at a time. You're the rock. You're the thing that people anchor themselves to when they don't know where else to go. That's how my career matriculated. But other than that, I was a fatal motor vehicle accident guy, so I got to see all the blood and guts and stuff like that.
Yeah, I don't know how you deal with that. That like I'll work murders all day long, but but traffic accidents with the fatals, I'm not a fan.
It's a big puzzle. It's all it is. It's a big puzzle. I just used to get into it. I had to go to a lot of autopsies, and people say, "Well, how do you sit through autopsies?" I sit through autopsies very easily because I remove the humanity. If you think your humor's bad, you go into the medical examiner's office. Those suckers they're sick. They're sick bastards. But I just looked at it all as a giant math problem. How fast was the car going? When did it leave the road? What evidence is here? Because all the pieces are there. You have to put them together. It's nothing different than a homicide detective working a case. It's the same thing. You're trying to figure out, is there anybody to prosecute? Is there anybody that did anything wrong? And you just have this whole scene that may have started 300 feet prior to the collision. And then when you solve something, when you figure something out, it's an enormous sense of satisfaction.
Yeah, my issue is that like homicides, murders, like most of them, like make sense. You know what I mean? Like you can but when somebody just gets creamed and a family of four gets wiped out, it's like, what the hell is this? How do I make sense of this? And from a mental state, I have a hard time with that. But yeah, so you did that. So how long did you work for your department?
So I was a police officer for 14 years. My career was going good. Like the work was solid internally. Listen, that was a different story. But I'm working. We work with the Pittman schedule. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's a 12-hour shift. We were a 28-man department, and I was on a 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. shift. And at the time, New Jersey had huge budget cuts, so they let go of all of our dispatchers, so officers took the desk in 4-hour blocks. So I was just about to start my block at 11 o'clock, and when you're on a Wednesday night, there's not much going on, and you never say the Q word, right? So I made that mistake at night. So I pull up next to my partner, and we're just talking and stuff. And I remember telling him, I wish there's just an alarm call, something, whatever it is, just get me out of the car. It's all I want to do. It's just make the night go a little faster. It's so damn quiet. I uttered that word. Worst thing I ever did, because I said, okay, let me go. Used to have to tug on doors of businesses, just make sure they're locked up. I'm going to go do my checks, and then I'm going to go in and do the desk. Well, I no sooner leave him 2 minutes later, I pull into the parking lot of this strip mall, and over the crack of the radio, officer on the desk says, start heading to this address. It's an open 911 call, unknown emergency. Now, the address that he sent us to was a well-known address. The victim and her boyfriend, or the resident and her boyfriend, just broke up. She was filed for a temporary restraining order. It was granted but not delivered. He had sent her a picture with a Glock 9mm to his head, which we had put it out to the surrounding towns. Everybody sort of knew this address. So we knew something was going on. We didn't know what. We're starved for information. We're trying to get it over the radio, and the officer on the desk just keeps saying, I hear a lot of arguing, but I don't know what's going on. So we're going there, lights and sirens. It's just me and another guy. We're going car to car, trying to figure out what to do. As we get closer, we shut off the sirens, we pull in. But we're complacent because we're in a small suburban town. And I pull up right in front of the residence. I never carried my cell phone with me. It's in my duty bag. My car is still running. And we go up to the door, and we're listening, and we can hear arguing. So what's the first thing you do? You pound on the door. On the other side of the door, we hear, don't come in here, don't come in here. You hear them yelling. Okay. Well, my partner and I make this plan. I go to my car and I get a Halligan bar. And for people who don't know what a Halligan bar is, it's a fireman's crowbar. My partner goes around the back. It's a townhouse complex, and there's backsliding glass door, front door, and garage. They're the only ways they can get out. So now, mind you, we got a 911 call going. So we have to get to the victim. So our plan is I'm gonna breach the front door. He's gonna cover the back door, and we're gonna try to drive him that way because he can see everything that's going on. So on a signal, I take the butt of the Halligan bar, and I'm trying to just make room to get the wedge in there, and I'm gonna pop the door. Funny thing is when I've told other people this story, they're like, why don't you just kick the door in? I said, because it's not 1970s. This isn't Hill Street Blues, and it's a steel door, you idiot. So I get one pop in there, and I hear pop, 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 pop. So what had happened, my partner's in the back. He can see everything that's going on. He sees the guy. He's got the gun held at the front door. So the first person that breaches that front door is going to get it. When he realizes that we were breaching, getting in, game's over, he puts the gun to the resident's head, and he's going to blow our brains out. So my partner exchanges gunfire with him. So this was all put out to the surrounding towns. We're low on manpower. It's a 2-man minimum. So surrounding towns start showing up. And as they're showing up, I'm going around the back to make sure my partner's okay. Those townhouses have these little privacy decks. They're like 9x9, and they got these wood slat walls. So at this time, we had another officer come, and we go on the deck. And my plan is I'm going to go over to the right, because if I go over to the right, I can see everything. I can see the victim. She's seated up against the wall, her knees to her chest. She's in obvious distress. I'm going to go over to the right. I find a good place where I can see everything. And we're not quiet, but I can't see the assailant. The assailant's name was Anthony Vocatore, and I found that out later. So I get over there and I figure I got decent cover, which is patio furniture, and it's not decent cover. It's Swiss cheese. I would have been shot in 2 seconds. The other officers are over to the right. So we make a plan. We're going to throw something through the sliding glass door, which has bullet holes in it, and we're going to go in. We're going to get her. So my partner grabs one of the chairs, throws it through the door. The glass breaks, goes everywhere. And at this moment, I see this huge bright flash. I feel warmth hit my face. And you know when you're at the range and you feel a little blowback with the gunpowder, it feels like grains of sand being thrown at your face? That's what I feel. I feel my left ear wiggle. I hit the ground. It's an instinct. And I duck, trying to make myself a smaller target. I'm like, holy shit. But I was incredibly lucid. I was calm. I was so calm that we used to take our key ring and put it on our mics, right? Our key rings. So my key rings on my mic, it falls off. I have the wherewithal to pick my keys up and put it back on my mic. Right now I'm seeing blood everywhere, and I'm like, I have no idea whether I'm shot. The other officers, they're right near the stairs. They're able to get off the stairs, which they should have. One of the lieutenants who was standing on the other side of the deck, he just ran. Like, he ran and left me for dead. I'll never forgive him for it. So I'm like, this guy just shot at me, and all this stuff's going through my head. The guys are yelling, "Are you shot?" And I said, "I don't know. My shoulder hurts, and I see a lot of blood." And that's really all I knew. Now at home, my wife's at home. It's about 10:45 at night, or about 11 o'clock at night. I have a 8-month-old, and I have a 3-year-old. So in my mind, I'm like, you know what? I'm trapped. I can't get out, because if I move, he's got a clear shot to me. So I'm figuring I'm dead. Like, I'm figuring this is going to be the end of it. I think about my 2 sons. I think about my wife, she's going to be attending a funeral, and she's going to have to raise these 2 boys on her own. And I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to die, and I make my peace with the Lord. So I get in a prone position, my gun's out, and I'm fully expecting him to come out. He shot at police twice. There's no reason why he wouldn't do it a third time. And I just wait. And I was pinned there for probably 2 minutes, but it felt like, hours, and I couldn't get out. So one of the officers held cover, and the other officer, I'm 6'4". I'm not the most nimble person in the world. I was a lineman my whole life. I always tell people, I said, I know I look like a swimmer, but the swimmer's body doesn't move that fast. So my partner that night grabbed the back of my belt and assisted me off the deck, and I got off. So as soon as I got off the deck, we look back and we see the guy running upstairs, and then we see the victim stand up, just up against the wall, and slowly just sleek out the garage. So we're going over the radio saying, hey, victim's coming out, thing's over. So now we have a barricaded suspect. We did our jobs. We preserved life, and I was really proud of that. I checked myself. I wasn't shot. Where the blood was coming from was when I went down, there was a ton of glass on the floor, and I came down on the glass.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I came down on the glass, and it shredded my arms. I still got a little piece of glass in my left arm. So I was overly happy. Now, it is July. It is hot, and we have to hold perimeter for 2 hours until the New Jersey Teams unit comes in, which is their SWAT. And we have to wait for relief. But again, we're waiting for this guy just to come running down and go out in a blaze of glory, and he never did. So the Teams unit comes, and I get out of there. I'm just a little shaken up. They send me to the ambulance, and I have to go to the hospital. I don't want to go, but they're forcing me to go. I go into the ambulance. Now, remember, my cell phone is in my car, which is sitting in front of the residence. I have to let my wife know. All the wives talk to each other, and I was afraid my wife was going to hear it from somebody else. So I grab an EMT's phone. My wife's number is the only number I know off the top of my head. I call from now. Just imagine this. Put yourself in my wife's shoes for a moment. She's at home, and she gets a call at about 12:30 at night from an unknown number. Hey, hon, it's me. I just want to let you know I was in a shooting. I'm okay. I'm not shot. I have to go to the hospital. I have to get glass removed from my arm. I'll be home as soon as I can. Click. Oh, by the way, have a good night. I hope you have sweet dreams.
Right.
I thought I was doing the right thing. Maybe I wasn't, but I didn't want her to find out and call me and not be able to get in contact with me. That was my main priority there. But I scared the shit out of this poor woman, and it was. I don't know if I did the right move at that point. So I go to the hospital. They pick at my arm. They remove a bunch of glass, and I have to go back to get the rest of the glass removed. And I get home at about 5 o'clock in the morning. Of course, I hug my kids tighter than I ever hugged them. I hug my wife, and I'm just grateful. I came close, right? I came close to eating it. So I try to get some sleep, but police world's like a sewing circle. So everybody's calling you, trying to figure out what's going on, what happened. I didn't really get any sleep. I went for a run. That didn't tire me out. I walked my dog. That didn't tire me out. So I was up. Now, that night, my wife's overly happy that I'm okay, and we're going to have a date night. We're going to go out to dinner. We're going to go see a movie, just sort of celebrate. So the devil comes over and my mother-in-law comes over and watches my kids. And we go see a movie. It's a Seth Rogen movie. This is back when Seth Rogen used to be funny.
Yeah, right.
And it's a movie called This Is the End. So we're sitting in a movie theater, and in the beginning, there's a moment when there's a bright flash of light and a big bang, and it's like people who are good go up to heaven, and the people who should be in hell just sort of stay on this decaying earth. Well, as soon as that happened, I started having this huge, like, my heart started pounding. I start pouring sweat. I can't breathe. I'm very conscious of my wife sitting next to me. I do not want to disturb her. She's been through enough. I don't know what's going on. I just tell her, look, my stomach's not feeling well. I'm going to go to the bathroom. I'll be right back. I go out in the hall, and I just get down on. I sit down up against the wall, and I can't breathe. I can't get myself together, and I don't know what the hell's going on. I can hear the thumping in the back from the movie through the wall. But I know my wife's in there waiting for me, and the longer it takes, the more concerned she's going to get, and I can't pull the door. I try to open the door, and it feels like lead. I just can't bring myself to go back in there. So about 15 minutes goes by, and my wife comes out, and she goes, you okay? And I'm like, yeah, you know what? I just ate something bad. My stomach's killing me. But I'm thinking I'm hiding stuff from her, but she knew something was wrong. She knew something was up, and she took mercy on me. I was trying to be stoic, and I was trying to be strong. She said, you know what? This movie sucks. Let's go home. So we go home, and that night, I had the worst nightmares I've ever had in my life. And they're weird nightmares. It's like you pull your gun, and the magazine drops, and all your bullets go everywhere. Or you pull the trigger, and a bang flag comes out. It's demoralizing. I used to have these nightmares so bad and thrash around that I'd wake up so wet that I'd have to do an outfit change because I thought I pissed myself. And my life is sort of spinning, very short amount of time. We go down to take the kids, just like to get away. We go down to take the kids down to see my parents. And I'm just quiet the whole time. And I'm just thinking because I'm not sleeping. I'm so tired. Well, we go to leave, and my 3-year-old spills chocolate milk on his car seat. I just snapped. I mean, I lost it. You might have thought that kid burnt down the house. I start screaming at this kid. My wife, being a good mother, steps in front. She starts taking the brunt and all. I don't care who I yell at. I'm going to yell at you. So we drove on the Garden State Parkway. It's about 2 hours down to see my parents. And my wife was begging me to let her, an 8-month-old, and a 3-year-old out on the side of the Garden State Parkway. That's how bad it was. So I know something's going on. I know something's wrong. I don't know where to turn. I call a police helpline, and they hook me up with a therapist, but nothing really. The only thing that would quiet my mind is drinking. And I started drinking. Like that night, I was just pouring alcohol down my throat until I just passed out. So I go back to the doctors on Monday. The only upside to this, what I thought at the time, was because of the injuries to my arm, that they gave me an extra day off. I was like, oh, okay, great. I get a 4-day weekend, and I'll be back to work. So I go to the doctors and picking stuff out of my arms, and the doctor turns to me and says, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, it's just glass. It's not a big deal. She goes, no, that's not what I'm talking about. Are you okay? Whatever she said or however she said it, I broke. I just broke down crying because I had no idea what was going on. And that was my life for a long time. That was my life. And there's a picture of me and my wife. We went somewhere. We went out to dinner somewhere. And if you look at me, you got to remember, the doctor says you can't go back to work. Like you got to take care of yourself for a moment. But there's a picture of me, and I just have this look on my face like I'm just not there. I don't look healthy. There's something wrong. After going through about a month and a half of just sleepless nights, snapping at my wife, I called my wife every bad name in the book. I called her, I'm a Godfather fan, and my wife's Italian, so of course I called her a guinea bitch. I spit in my wife's face. I spit in my wife's face. There's nothing as demoralizing as that. I threw remotes at her. One day my kid had a bunch of Nerf guns, like I just wanted, I bought him all the stuff that I had when I was a kid. He points the Nerf gun at me. He's playing around. He's 3-year-old. Well, I do the move. When somebody points a gun at you, they teach you it over and over again in the academy. I do it on a 3-year-old. And you have kids, and this is going to resonate with you. Did you ever have your kid get so scared that they just look at you with an open mouth?
Yeah.
Yeah. That look scared the hell out of me. Yeah. And I don't know who was more scared, him or I. But I snapped the Nerf gun in two. I threw it in the garbage, and then I walked out of the house. I started to carry my gun because I wasn't sleeping. I was getting real paranoid. I was drinking. So I started carrying my off-duty gun. And as soon as I snapped that gun, I walked out of the house, got in my car, drove away, parked my car, turned off my cell phone, put it into the glove box, and I walked into the woods for about 2 miles until nobody's going to find me. And I sat there for 3 days with a bottle of water. And I don't know what my plan was. I really didn't have a plan. I just knew I'm starting to turn into this monster that I don't like. And I just stay there. Don't sleep. I just sit up against a tree trying to figure out what my next move is. So finally, I guess I got hungry and I went home. And I walked in the door like nothing happened. Where are you? I was nowhere. I never told anybody where I was. But I'm not sleeping. I removed myself from the bedroom, and I'm sleeping downstairs. I lived in just a bi-level house, and I had an office off to the side. I can't take this anymore because this is not me. I don't know what the hell's...
How long had it been? Like
since the shooting?
Yeah.
Month and a half, 2 months.
Okay.
2 months, and I'm out. I'm going to see the therapist and stuff like that, and I just can't live like this anymore. So at about 2 a.m., I decide this is going to be the night. This is going to be a night that I'm going to end it. And I go into my office. I grab my gun. And I'd recently qualified before the shooting, so my gun, I never cleaned my gun since then. I pick it up. I have it on my desk, and I write a note. I give bank passwords and saying I'm sorry about 1,000,000 times. This is not the way I want it to work out. And I just write this note. And then I go over and I have this wall in my office that I have my diplomas on and my police academy graduation photo and everything that I'm proud of, pictures of my grandfather. And I pick up this gun and I put it in my mouth. Now I can still feel the metal on my teeth. I can taste the gunpowder. I take the hammer. It was a Smith & Wesson 38 G Special. I cock it back, put it in my mouth, put my thumb on the trigger. I can feel the ridges on the trigger to this day. And I'm sitting there with a gun in my mouth for probably 20 minutes. I'm going through the whole situation. The last 2 months of my life, I'm going through, and I'm looking for a reason not to do it because I don't want to do it, but I don't have any other choice. I cannot keep doing this to my family. I'm a burden to my family. I'm a complete monster. And after about 20 minutes, now mind you, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. My family's upstairs sleeping. After about 20 minutes, I take this gun out of my mouth and I hold it in my hand. It feels like it weighs 50 pounds. And I'm like, I just paused. Like it was just a pause. It was a moment of clarity. And I said, what the hell was I going to do? Because somebody's going to find me down here with half my head missing. You're stupid. So the next day I realized I can't be trusted with my gun. I didn't talk to anybody. I talked to like 2 people from my department, and I called one of them up and I said, look, I'm going to put my gun in a lockbox. Can you just hold it for me for a little bit? No questions, no judgment. He said, sure, just meet me here. I'll take it. And he kept my gun for 6 years after that. But there are other ways to kill yourself. I tried to take a lot of pills. I tried to drink myself to death. I'm driving down the road and I'm looking for the ideal place to go off a bridge or something. Because the odd thing is I felt very cowardly. Because while I wanted to kill myself, I didn't want it to hurt. And I wanted to make sure that I was found quickly. The one time I tried to hang myself, I did it in a garage. But I'm 240 pounds and the rope I had didn't hold me. So I put it over one of the rafters. I put it around my neck and I drop. And I wake up about 3 hours later on the ground. The freaking rope broke because I'm a fat fuck. And, I knocked myself out when I hit either I choked myself out or not. I don't remember. And now I'm mad. Like now I'm a complete failure. So I'm a failure at life. I can't live my life and I can't even kill myself properly. So now I'm a failure on both ends. And the drinking's just going and it's going and it's just getting out of control. I'm drunk every moment I'm awake. The one saving grace is I started getting involved in group therapy. And I felt the power of community because when you're going through stuff like this, you feel so alone. You feel like the weakest man alive. You feel like nobody's going to understand you. And it's the biggest lie that we tell ourselves. Next to the world is better off without me. But as I start to listen to other officers, and the first couple times I'm there, I don't say a word. I just shut up. It's not like the other guys where, who when they have the group therapy session, like they say things that aren't true. People are telling stories and they're telling my story. They're telling the things that I'm going through. And that loneliness that you feel goes away for a moment while you're in group therapy. And then what do you do after group therapy? You go out and drink some more. But I knew, so my therapist tells me, he's like, look, he does this test with me. He's the only gun-toting conservative I've ever met in my world that's been to, he's been to Woodstock. He's an older guy. Has the Woodstock ticket on his wall. But he's an old Italian from Newark. If you've watched the Many Saints in Newark, his name's Dr. Eugene Stefanelli. That's him. He's like in between a gangster and a cop. So he brings in a gun, and it's a 1945 Colt Army model with the Bakelite handles. And he says, hey, listen, I'm going to sell this gun. I just want to know what you think of it. And he hands it to me, obviously unloaded, hands it to me. And you would have thought that it was something I didn't even want to touch. It screwed me up a little bit because I'm holding it in my hand. I don't want to seem unmasculine. So I'm holding it in my hand. I'm like, wow, it's a really nice gun. And I hand it back to him real quick. He says to this day that is the moment that I knew you could never go back being a police officer. So now I have to go through the retirement process. But I also have to clean my life up. I'm full-blown alcoholism. I have to clean that up. I have to start going through the process of retirement because I just can't return to the police department anymore. I'm not every thunder and lightning storms would send me under my bed. So I checked myself into rehab. Now, oddly enough, I get into a room in rehab with a guy, and we're just talking. I got longer hair, I grew a beard, and we're telling, what are you in for? And I said, I drank too much. And what are you in for? Oh, I got arrested for heroin. I was like, oh, you got arrested. Where'd you get arrested? Now, mind you, my brother was taking police tests. He is a police officer at this time. I was like, where'd you get arrested? And he mentions the town my brother works in. I'm like, oh, shit. I said, well, do you happen to remember? Now, remember, he doesn't know my last name. I said, do you happen to remember the officer who arrested you? I'll never forget that motherfucker's name says my last name. So I'm in a room in rehab with a guy my brother arrested. Now, one thing rehab did for me, it made me realize how I don't like enclosed places. Real, like I thank God when I was a kid, all that shit I did, I never went to jail because I don't think I would have survived. I found out very quickly that being sober was better being in here. So I was able to get through the program very quickly. And when I came out with completely different eyes. The one valuable thing I did was I stayed in group therapy, and I retired officially on June 1st, 2014. And I was able to stay in group therapy because there was a lot of people who gave me help when I was in really, really bad shape. And I always felt I had a debt to pay. So I stayed and helped other officers as they start filtering in and out with group therapy. And I did that for about 5 or 6 years. And not the proudest moment of my life, but being 12 years removed is probably the best thing that ever happened to me.
Was staying in group therapy?
No, it was
Or the whole process?
the whole process, the incident, the shooting, my fall, because what it taught me, where I was 39 when I retired. I was 39, and people would ask me, what do you do? I would say I'm a landscaper because I never wanted to talk about the follow-up question, which was, wow, you're really young. What'd you do? Get on when you were 12? You don't want to tell anybody that you were in a shooting and you were just too weak because you still feel weak at that time. I was just afraid to tell anybody I was a cop. As time moves on, that weakness that I felt became my strength. And I realized that I went through something and I survived in some really dark places. Like, it got really bad. I'm giving you the Reader's Digest version. It got really, really bad. How my wife stayed with me, I'll never understand. She's the strongest woman I ever met in my life. I lead with that now. I'm a retired police officer. Wow, you're retired, you're young. Well, I was in a shooting and kind of screwed me up for a few years, but that's a good thing. But here's what I say now, because I travel all around the country, and and it's really something that I feel beholden to do, to talk to people and open up a conversation, because there's a lot of mental health advocates right there, and I'm not real crazy about that word advocate. Advocates will tell you that we're trying to bring awareness to a problem, police suicide. Well, we're pretty aware that that's a problem. There's nobody that needs to bring awareness to that. So my plan is, when I go out and talk, inevitably 5, 6, 10 people will come up to me privately on the end or reach out to me and say, I'm having some issues. And then I have resources, because I've been doing this for so long, I have resources to send them to. It's all about opening up the conversation. And no cop in the world is going to talk to somebody who's never been through it. It's just not going to happen, because they're going to feel you don't understand. And that's where I sit today. So that moment, that shooting that I thought I was the weakest person alive, has got me here. Sometimes I think, I don't know if I was ever meant to be a cop. I think it was a conduit in order to get to doing something that I really, really should be doing with my life.
Do you know who Ryan Swab is? Have you ever heard that name before?
No.
He is he's a counselor in addiction and trauma. He was just on Andrew Huberman's show, and actually I just talked to him earlier today. I did a podcast with him, but he mentioned on that on the podcast that he did on the Huberman Lab that he talked about, like, getting his clients to be okay feeling bad. So it has them basically sit in your pain and realize, like, this is something you're supposed to experience. The point is not to just feel good all the time, and especially if you feel shitty. Like, you need to feel the shittiness so you understand what to do with it. And then he also mentions, like, it's not until you realize that you don't have power and release that attempt to control things that you actually gain way more power. And I think he uses the analogy, like, if I go and get into a fight with the biggest kids on the block every single day, they're always going to kick my ass if I always say I'm just going to do it harder, And it's not until you're like, I can't beat these dudes, then you can start to solve the problem differently. Versus,
well, that's a biblical reference. Okay, so my power is made perfect in my weakness. Okay, God's power is made perfect in your weakness. But so I use the analogy a little bit different. So when I was going through really, really bad times, I did everything I can to anesthetize it, to to make it better. I'm supposed to feel this pain, right? So I want to feel this pain because it's not a good feeling. I want to make sure that I'm never here again. And if you avoid stuff, if you run away from stuff, it's never going away. It's just going to hit you and come back at you bigger. So before I was a cop, I was traveling, and in the airport, I pick up this book called Surviving Worst Case Scenarios. And in there, I'm reading it on the plane. One of the things in there was surviving a prairie fire. There's no prairies in New Jersey. I don't know why I read it, but I read it. So human instinct is to run away from danger. You see danger in front of you, you need to go the other way. Any hardship that comes your way, you strive for comfort in your life. You want a bigger house, you want a nicer car, whatever, a better meal, anything to make you comfortable. So with a prairie fire, if you see this wall of flame coming at you, your instinct is going to be run in the opposite direction. But you can't survive a prairie fire that way, because what's going to happen is it's going to grow and grow and grow, and it's going to get you. It's going to burn you. You're going to die. The way you survive a prairie fire is you have to run straight into the fire. You'll get through the other side. You'll be a little scarred. You'll be a little charred, but you're going to be alive. And that is the only way that you can survive something like that. So I've used that metaphor. I never forgot that little book, and this was probably 2000, maybe 99 that I read this. I never forgot that, and I apply that to all different things in my life. Just to put it into context for your audience, imagine not paying your credit card bills this month. What's going to happen? Next week, you're going to get late charges. Your interest charges are going to be bigger. Don't pay it the following week. Is it going to go away? Of course not. It's going to get bigger until one day the late charges and the interest charges alone are going to be more than you can handle, and then you're going to be in some trouble. Well, life's a lot like that. When you have pain coming your way, you better face that head on, because if you try to ignore it, it's not going away. It's going to always be there, and it's going to get you if you're not careful. But yes, to piggyback on what they said, my weakness is now my greatest power. The reason I'm able to talk to people and to reach people is because I know that pain. I know that pain all too well. I know that pain from childhood. I know that pain from after my shooting, and it just broke me. But without it, I wouldn't be able to do something that's really changing some minds.
Yeah, we're where we are currently is just a collection of decisions that we've made up to this point, and it all accumulates to be where we're supposed to be. And you never know when you're going to get the next door to open and things are going to change. You know what I mean? It's just like keeping your eyes open and understanding that all the shit you've been through happens for reasons to bring you to this spot. And
it's nudging.
Yeah.
It's nudging, like we talked about. I got nudged in these directions. I didn't want to, and they sucked. They were horrible. But something's pushing me in this direction I want to be. The stuff that happened to me in the past, it's because I wasn't supposed to do it. I wasn't supposed to be a teacher. Maybe I wasn't supposed to be a cop. I loved it, but maybe that wasn't for me. Maybe it was making a difference. Maybe it was making an impact on the world in whatever form, fashion that is.
Yeah, absolutely. So when did you start your podcast?
So group therapy was going on, and then in March 21st of 2020, this little thing happened across the globe called COVID. Everything shut down. Group therapy shut down, and I missed it. Like I enjoyed it. It was something that was fulfilling to me. It was more fulfilling to me than being a cop, believe it or not. And I was, at the time, I just was listening to podcasts. I was like, oh, you know what? This pain into purpose, this post-traumatic success theory of mine, I think there's some meat behind it. I think I'll start a podcast. And my wife understands me well enough to know that when I get my mind set on something, I'm pretty hell-bent on it. So one day I buy all this equipment knowing nothing. I knew nothing. And I set it up in my basement. Same basement where I'm sitting right now is a little different. And I just start recording. First episode, maybe I had 25 listens on audio. Most of them were mine. And I was like, okay, there's kind of something here, and we just recorded 239 last night. So we're, full video, full studio, and it just grew, and it grew beyond something that I couldn't understand, because the one constant, the one commonality in every human being on the planet is we all experience suffering. How we deal with that suffering is different for every single person. And the way you deal with your suffering is different from the way I'm going to deal with my suffering. Doesn't mean that it's less valuable, but the audience may listen to something that you're going to say and it might resonate with them. So they take a tool and it helps out their life. So that's what it is. And I never bring anybody in who is in the midst of it because there's no value to that. I have to wait until they're through it. I have to find out what was their magic bullet in order to get them through it. For me, my thing was I had to have a bullet graze my ear to wake me up enough to realize that suffering. So C.S. Lewis, I'm a big C.S. Lewis guy, right? Suffering is the good things in life, and that's the thing that propels you to the next level. If suffering is so good, ought it not be sought? Well, you don't go out there and seek suffering to that extent. Nobody wants to try to get into dangerous situations. But one of the things I realized is throughout my life, I had passively been trying to kill myself since I was probably 10 years old, with all sorts of risky behaviors. I was a motorcycle guy, right? I used to ride my motorcycle, do wheelies doing 70 miles an hour. I've jumped out of 8 airplanes. I just would do these crazy things, this risky behavior, not actively trying to kill myself, but passively trying to kill myself because I didn't care. My life had no value. My life has a lot more value now. Obviously, my kids and my wife do that for me, but also my purpose. So it's a completely different realm now that I'm looking at things. The podcast highlights that. The podcast gives people a little bit of hope that there's a way out. They don't have to. Tomorrow's not going to look like today. And I use the term "not today," right? So when somebody's in the depths of it, and I speak to a lot of people who are in the depths, I say whatever you're planning on doing, whatever your overall plan is, just don't deal with it today. Because tomorrow you're going to look at it with different eyes. Simon Sinek says this thing where most people in sticky situations just need about 8 minutes of your time because that 8 minutes will get them through that little sticky spot. And I believe that too. So when somebody reaches out on social media, especially a cop reaches out, way too many people have my phone number. I'll give them my phone number. We'll sit and have a conversation, and it just gets them over that. Gets them to the next day. So whatever they were going to do, they're just not going to do it today. So everything I do, I always end with "not today." I hashtag everything "not today" because I'm a firm believer in it. If you can just get through this moment, today's going to look completely different. The sun will rise tomorrow. I promise you. It doesn't, and darkness doesn't last forever.
Yeah, I mean, and that's true of everything. You know what I mean? Like you talk about like pursuing goals and getting through hard things, like doing hard things. It's if you can get to the next meal, just keep going. If you can get to the next, just get to sleep, get to the next morning. All these little micro goals and micro steps. It's kind of the same.
Well, it keeps your world small, right? So alcoholics will use it and they'll say the one day at a time. Because if you say, like, I've been sober now for November 26th, I'll be sober for 12 years. If you start thinking of it in terms of, I need to stay sober forever, that is a really broad concept to grasp, for your mind to wrap around, to say, I'm going to be sober forever. No, you're just going to be sober today. You're going to be sober for this hour, this minute, this second. Because if you think of it in that big term like that, it becomes overwhelming and you just kind of set yourself up for failure.
Yeah, I see that with with on a smaller scale, fitness and nutrition. Like, hey, listen, we don't need to say that we're going to with remove everything forever, and you're only going to eat like super clean, no sugar, like forever. Just maybe not today, maybe not this meal, and just one at a time.
It's Jocko Willing. I love Jocko. He's an amazing man. He says when you wake up in the morning, and I do, I wake up at 3:00 in the morning to get to the gym. When you wake up in the morning and you don't feel like going to the gym, just go to the gym today. And if you still don't feel like going to the gym tomorrow, deal with it tomorrow. Same concept, just a different way of putting it. You want something bad enough, you figure out a way to do it.
So how did you get tied into this jiu-jitsu seminar?
So, okay, let me back up here. Last year I get an email from somebody in LA saying, "Hey, we think you'd be good for this show that we do. And we'd like to have a Zoom call to try to set up you coming out and doing this show." I thought it was my friends screwing around with me. I have some friends. We all have those friends, right, that you can't put on speakerphone because they're going to say some really messed up shit. Well, all my friends are like that. I have 3 best friends, and they're all like that. So I get this email, and I don't really pay too much attention to it. I send out my contact. I was, yeah, sure, whatever, figuring it was total bullshit. So sure enough, 3 days later, it was a company called Jubilee Media, and they get me on the phone. I didn't realize that I was auditioning. Like, I was just on a Zoom call. I didn't realize I was auditioning. I was auditioning against 6 other cops, and she's like, "You're the one." They fly me out to L.A., and I didn't even know what Jubilee Media was, but I went home and I told my kids, and my youngest goes, "Dad, Jubilee's pretty big." And I go out to L.A., and I film this thing where it's one cop debating 20 criminals. And they're coming at me hard, right? And I don't really, like, I had no idea what the hell I was getting myself into. But I knew something was up because as I'm walking in, Charlie Kirk is walking out. I go, what the hell's going on here? And as I was walking out, Ben Shapiro is walking in. I'm like, I'm not really in this guy's league. I don't understand what the hell's going on. So we do this thing, and it was interesting. I watched these guys ramp this stuff up, and well, during that whole conversation, one of them said, "Well, police need to be trained better." And I came back and I said, "Well, I believe every police officer should be trained in jujitsu because for jujitsu it does more than just gives you the physicality, the ability to control somebody. It's a confidence builder. So when you have a suspect or somebody in front of you who you're dealing with who's spouting off at you, calling you every name in the book, if you have the confidence to look at that person and go, bro, you better shut your mouth or you're going to get hurt, because you know what you can do. You know what your capability is. There's no fear in you. You know you can wrap this guy up in 2 seconds. You're less likely to do it because there's no damage to your ego, because that's what gets us in a lot of these bad situations. A lot of it's ego. Somebody's calling you an asshole 17 times. Well, there's something in you that wants to punch. Once you want to punch him in the face, but you can't. Right? When you know jujitsu, you have the confidence to know that I can do things to you that will really, really hurt you, and I can do them very quickly at the drop of a dime. So I said that comment in this video. So the video gets released, and it's popular. I think it's 5.5 million views right now. Somebody reaches out to me on social media and said, "Hey, we watched your 1 Cop versus 20 on Jubilee Surrounded. Would you like to come speak at a seminar we run?" And I said, well, I give him my phone number, and we get on the phone, and I get on the phone with a nice lady, Kate Califano, and she tells me about Seminar Stack, and I said, you know what? It's not that far away. She said it's real close to Hershey, so I said, sure, absolutely. This sounds really good, and I really believe in it. And that's kind of how I got involved with it. I had them up. I had them on my show. Eric Smith, her husband, still going through some crazy shit. And it was a great show, but I truly believe in what they're doing. They're trying to give officers a space because physical fitness was one of my tools for getting through all this stuff. And I believe police officers with the better training with jujitsu tactics, I think it's actually going to lower use of force incidents. I think it's good physically fit. There's nothing worse to me than me looking at an officer with a big pot belly, and I don't like the beards now. In New Jersey, they all got beards. I can't stand it. Like you're breaking down one of your constructive authority tools by not looking the part. You took this job, and there's some things in this job that are different than other jobs. You can go to an office building and be overweight, be unhealthy, smoke cigarettes, and all that stuff. It doesn't work real well as a cop. And we die young enough anyway.
Right.
So why are you trying to accelerate the process? So I believe in what she's doing. I believe what her and Eric are doing. I believe in the Adopt a Cop program, which I think is fantastic. Officers who are hurt, they get jujitsu, their jujitsu paid for, because jujitsu is really expensive. So they're doing great things, and they're not only are they getting these officers better physically fit, but they're also doing amazing things for their mental health. And that's the area that I sit in. So I was able to get CLE certified. And so the officers who show up, they get credits for their licensing. And I think it's going to be a great event. I can't wait to see the other things. I don't really even care about what I'm going to do. I want to see the ruck. They're doing a ruck. They're doing a match. So that's the stuff that I want to see.
Yeah, there are some great instructors there. I don't know, my buddy CJ Delaney. He's a
Yeah, I saw his picture. Yeah.
He's fantastic, man. He is, I mean, he's a cop's cop too. He teaches at the academy out there, and but like you talk about a dude that knows application and how it all fits together, and like I've talked to him at length for stuff I was going through with jujitsu training and personally. Like the dude's awesome. I can't wait. Hopefully, I get out to that event. I can make that happen. But yeah, you brought up some really good points. I think like competence, being physically competent in jujitsu, and I would even say jujitsu, wrestling, like whatever defensive tactics you want to train on. So it gives you the confidence to be able to perform, and that's going to provide you with control, right? Internal locus of control versus all these external factors that you're already worried about. That is going to do a ton for your nervous system regulation on the job, and then that obviously carries all over and permeates the rest of your life.
Well, I watch. So I watch. Nothing will humble you so much as jujitsu, because I've been tapped out by guys that are 120 pounds, and
Right.
I've tapped out guys that are a higher level than me, because on any given day on the mat, something could happen. You could have an opening. You could open something up. You get them in some sort of lock, and they're done. And I've been working out my entire life. I've never had a workout as good as jujitsu. So physically, it's that. But confidence wise, it makes you drop your ego. So I was here's a real interesting story. So I'm in the gym with my oldest son, and there's a guy next to me who I've seen. He was a black belt, so I've seen him in the upper classes. I don't think he recognized me. And I'm looking at my son. My son is 6'5". He's bigger than me. My 15-year-old. He's a freshman in high school. He's gigantic. And I'm looking at this little guy, and I go up to my son. And I said, "What do you think of that little guy over there? You think if you were going to roll around with him, you think you could take him?" And my son is, he's full of bravado. He loves the gym, and he says he's a little guy. And I said, "All right, I'm going to teach you something. Don't just look at the height. I need you to look at this guy. I need you to look at him from head to toe. What do you notice first?" And he's looking. He's like, "I don't know." And I'm like, "Look at his ears.
Right.
Look at his
I
ears."
was gonna say.
Yep. I was like, that son of a bitch will kill you. He'll kill you in about a second and a half. But here's the thing with this guy. So he says something to my son. He's like, he's doing good. He's a big boy. People who do jujitsu are often the nicest people in the world. Why are they the nicest people? Because they got no ego. None. They've been tapped out 100 times. They don't have anything in the world to prove other than, hey, let me do everything I can in order to avoid a fight. I love the speech that Jordan Peterson gives about this. It's like, you should be capable of violence, because there's nothing inherently good about being weak. You should be capable of violence and learn how to control it. And that's what jiu-jitsu does. Allows you to be capable of violence, but teaches you how to control it, to control it.
Yep. There's no virtue in being harmless. There's no
Correct.
virtue in that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's what jiu-jitsu does, and that's why I'm looking forward to this. I've never seen anything like it out there. I know BJJ Cops does some stuff like this, and I've spoken to that gentleman from there, but I can't wait for this to happen. And here's the other positive side is I'm doing so much and I'm traveling so much. I rarely get to go away with my family, so I'm taking a couple extra days. I'm bringing my family out there. We're gonna make it to a little mini vacation. So not only do I get some time with my family, but I get to also be amongst people who are doing the right thing.
I love it. Well, I won't keep you all night, man. I think that's a good place to kind of wrap this up. Where can people find more about you and whatever you want to promote?
All you got to do is go to realkevindonaldson.com. You'll have links to, I wrote a book that was published last year called Man, You Are Crazy, because that's what I thought I was. I thought I was absolutely crazy. But that is sort of it's kind of like a manual for law enforcement to navigate the traps of mental health. I wrote it with a gentleman named Chris Anderson. You've seen him on First 48 He's a homicide detective in Alabama. And the cool thing is you being in Indiana, Chris being in Alabama, we all sort of go through the same things. We're just in different locations in the country. So the theory that I had that I was all alone is absolute bullshit. On my website, too, you'll find a link to One Cop versus 20. You find a link to my podcast. You find a link to everything I ever done. I've written, I probably have 40 published articles in various magazines because I used to write for Sovereign magazine, and everything I do is on there.
Yeah, I think that's a great message to end this on and kind of wrap this all up. Is like there are so many stories from the beginning with your growing up, going to college, your police career. Like there was a lot of things that it's like, well, that wasn't exactly me, but it was kind of me. Even going through all of that stressful stuff and the drinking and like I can relate to a ton of it. I didn't have the exact same experience, but I can tell you without a doubt, every bad decision I've ever made, I was drinking. You know what I mean? So,
No great story ever starts with this one time I had a salad.
right. So, I mean, I tell that to the kids in football that I coach, and my own kids. Like, I'm very open and honest with them about like, hey, I've had struggles. These are things that have happened. Like, you're not alone. Your story is unique to you, but at the same time, it's a thread that's common a lot around a lot of people. So.
Well, I appreciate you having me on. I really do. And I hope I see you out there on August 2nd.
Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully I can make it happen. So
All right.
thank you very much. I appreciate your time, and we'll have to stay in touch.
Thanks for having me.
All right. See ya.